Good evening, and welcome to part one of our 2016-17 Parent Education Series. I'm Kim Heisner, Chair of the Morris Educational Foundation, and on behalf of the MEF Board of Trustees, I want to thank you for coming tonight. The MEF gave over $230,000 last year to enhance the educational opportunities for our students. And since its inception, we have awarded over $2 million to the Morris School District. We are pleased to sponsor this event tonight through the Morristown Rotary Fund for Parent Education and the Morris Township-Morristown Joint Municipal Alliance. We are also very excited that this event is being supported by our growing partnership with the Atlantic Health System's Morristown Medical Center, its Atlantic Sports Medicine Department, and its Atlantic Healthy Schools Initiative. A special thank you to our newest partner, the Education Association of Morris, our Teachers Association, who graciously provided the hospitality for the Lunch and Learn session earlier today with the coaches, as well as the refreshments and the volunteers tonight's event. We also want to thank Mike McGuire, a teacher at Morristown High School, for taking our parent ed presentation this evening, Melissa Spiota, MEF trustee, for being our parent ed liaison, and Chrissy Weatherby for her continued hard work and support. We are grateful for each of these organizations and individuals. We couldn't do this without you. I would now like to introduce Jonathan Taylor of the Morristown Rotary to say a few words.
Thank you, Kim. My name is Jonathan Taylor, and this is John Lyons. We are here tonight as representatives from the Rotary Club of Morristown. Our club has helped sponsor this event, and we look forward to sponsoring events in the future as well. Our club raises money from a number of fundraisers, but primarily from our most popular event called the Taste of Morristown. The Taste of Morristown takes place the first week of March and is a wine and food tasting primarily from local restaurants and wine vendors. Please watch for the familiar posters that appear around town starting in January. Rotary International is our parent organization, and they are also the largest international student exchange. They run the most. I start again. I'm sorry. The largest organizer of international student exchange programs. In fact, we currently have a lovely girl from Belgium who is attending Morristown High School right now. Perhaps some of you or your kids have seen her in the hallways. We are currently seeking 1 to 2 host families to enjoy the experience of welcoming a student into your home. If you think you would be interested, or if you want to know more information, both John and I will be seated in the back at the end of this presentation. Please approach us, and we have some printed materials for you. Thank you, and enjoy Mr. O'Sullivan's presentation.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you and the Rotary for your generous support of the Morris Educational Foundation. There are 2 amazing people I'd like to introduce to you who work tirelessly to organize, coordinate, and present these phenomenal speakers time after time. Their passion for bringing current and quality topics to our community is unmatched, and we are very grateful. So a huge thank you to Jennifer Rocco and Deborah Brossiker for all that you do to plan this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you to the MEF and all the community partners. We really couldn't be here tonight without everybody's support. As Kim said, my name is Jennifer Rocco, and this is Deborah Brossiker. And between the 2 of us, we have 5 children who attend schools in the district, ranging from 3rd grade up to a senior in high school. So we're parents who have struggled through a lot of challenges raising our kids, and we're big believers that coming together in environments like this with speakers who have a tremendous amount of expertise to share, with community partners who work in our communities and see our children on a daily basis and know what they're going through. We believe all of us coming together and being on the same page is going to help us to raise the healthiest, happiest, most successful children possible. So thank you all for coming, because this really demonstrates how much you care, not only about your own children, but about the children throughout the community. So bravo to you for being here. A quote that I saw recently from Nelson Mandela, he said, "There's no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children." So I'm really proud to be a part of the school district, proud to be a part of the MEF, and proud to be partnering with the Atlantic Health System, because it, I think, speaks volumes to how much we really care about the kids who are really our future. So thank you again for coming. And I'll just mention a couple of quick things. John's going to do his presentation, and then after that, he's going to welcome our two guest panelists onto the stage. We have Dr. Damian Martins, who's the Director of Orthopedics and Sports Medicine for the Atlantic Health System. We're really happy to have him here. And Mr. Smitty Horton, the Athletic Director here at Morristown High, who helped us to organize a lunch and learn with many of the coaches at the high school today. So we really, one of our big goals is to bring everybody together, to bring educators together, the health community together, the parents together, the teachers, everyone together, so we can really be all taking advantage of this tremendous knowledge and sharing it and spreading it. And hopefully tonight you'll gain some really good inspiration to go out into the community and spread all this great information that you're going to learn from John tonight. And then when the Q&A session is over, John will be out in the lobby. We have books that we can offer for sale. We have lots more, and he'll be out there signing. And lastly, I guess just please fill out an evaluation and let us know how we're doing. Let us know if you enjoyed the program. Let us know if we can do anything better. And we've made it really easy. If you don't want to write anything, you can scan the QR code or access the link and do it online. So that's it for me, and Deborah's going to introduce John. Thanks so much.
Okay, we're really excited to have John here tonight. And just to give you a little background on him, John O'Sullivan is the founder and CEO of the Changing the Game project, which started in 2002 as a call to parents and coaches to improve the entire youth sports environment to make sports a more enjoyable experience for our kids. John is a former collegiate and professional soccer player and has coached for more than 20 years on the youth, high school, and college level. He is the author of 2 #1 selling books, including Changing the Game, The Parent's Guide to Raising Happy, High-Performing Athletes and Giving Youth Sports Back to Our Kids, which again are selling out in the atrium. John has been a consultant and keynote speaker throughout the U.S., Canada, and Europe, including TEDx, the National Soccer Coaches Association of America, Hockey Canada, USA Football, just to name a few. Originally from the East Coast, he received his BA from Fordham University and his master's from the University of Vermont, and now resides in Bend, Oregon, with his family, which includes 2 of his own aspiring young athletes. Let's give John a warm welcome to Morristown.
Thank you guys so much. I love being back on the East Coast. I grew up on Long Island, and I flew into Newark the other night, and the beautiful fall colors that are still left reminded me why I love it here, and the 2 hours it took me to get to the George Washington Bridge reminded me why I left. But what was really cool was, so my parents live out in Port Jefferson in the North Shore of Long Island. I went out and stayed with them, and my mom just turned 80, and my dad's 81, and my brother's still out there. And last night I spoke in Oyster Bay, Long Island, and I drove with my mom to the talk, and as we're driving along, we go past the high school I went to, and then we go to Syosset, which was the soccer club I played for. And I realized, it hit me last night how many things that my parents did for me to make my sports experience a great one. I was starting to think about how many hours they sat in traffic with us in the back seat doing our homework, my brother and I, or how long they drove us to school or to the soccer clubs we played for. And it really hit home because my kids are 9 and 10 now, and I'm thinking about all the things that my wife and I are doing for our kids. And so I was so grateful last night, A, that my parents would be part of my talk, but B, just my mom going, I'm not driving here, and we're driving here. And I remember sitting in that Dunkin' Donuts waiting for you to play your soccer games and all that stuff. So it was great. So what I want to share with you tonight is kind of a little bit about my journey as an athlete, but more as a dad and as a coach. And what I've learned in the couple years since I got out of coaching full time and started the Change the Game project, and then wrote the book that's outside, and another one since, and I have a third proposal into a publisher right now. And really about how we can create what I call a player-first environment in youth sports. How can we make sports for our kids about the needs and the values and the priorities of the children who are playing, and not necessarily the adults who are coaching and running it, or the businesses that are running it. Because right now we have this really scary statistic. Right? We lose 3/4 of children to organized sports by the age of 13. That's a crazy number when I think about how impactful and how important sports was in my life, that so many kids now walk away from it. So I came across this statistic a couple years ago, and there was one particular day when I decided to start the Change the Game project. And what happened on this day was I was watching my daughter, and she was 6 at the time, and she was playing 6-year-old soccer, and you've all probably been to that, right? The giant ball, right? And it moves around, the kids trample each other, and they're having fun, and then one kid breaks out of the block and scores a goal, but it's in the wrong goal. And she's equally as excited, right? And so I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, this is great. Like the parents are positive, the coaches are positive, there's no referee to yell at. This is what sports is supposed to be about. Well, unfortunately that day, right next door is a 10-year-old, quote, competitive boys game. And it's competitive not because the kids are competing harder, it's competitive because all the adults are competing harder. And so watching this game, and the coaches are screaming, and the parents are screaming, and everyone's yelling at the ref who's only like 13, right? And I'm watching this happen, and all of a sudden a kid hits a bad pass, and the other team scores a goal, steals and scores a goal. And this coach jumps off the bench and screams out and subs him out of the game. And this poor boy's walking off the field, and he's got his head down, and his dad's yelling at him at the other side. And the other parents are holding their heads and shaking their heads. I'm thinking to myself, this is why so many kids walk away right here. Here he is, he's with his friends, he's trying a really hard thing, play soccer, and he made a mistake, and all the adults in his life that mattered to him are yelling at him because he made an error. And so 2 things popped into my head, right? Thing number 1 was, does anyone on my field, or are they saying to themselves, right, in 4 years I want to spend way more time, way more money so my kid can have less fun? And the second thing I was thinking was, who's running this gin joint? Who's running this league? And sadly, that was me. It was my league. And so that's the day I said, well, I need to do something about this. And that's how sort of the Change the Game project was born. But like I said, I want to share a couple of things that I learned in that journey with you tonight. And I want to do it in 3 parts. Part number 1, I want to talk about some of the common mythology that surrounds youth sports. Those things that we hear as parents, and I hear them too. Oh, you have to do this, and then you have to do this, and then you have to do this if your kid's going to be any good. And we're going to dispel some of these myths. Number 2, I want to talk about the psychology of performance. So what makes kids tick? And not just in sports, but in any achievement activity. So whether it's school or music or anything, what's going to make them keep going, and what's going to make them walk away? And then finally, I'm going to give you 3 things that you can do tonight, walking out of here, that will make a huge difference. And the beautiful thing about these 3 things is, right, in the day of, $200 shoes and $400 carbon fiber bats, they don't cost a penny. They make a far greater difference in how long your kids play, how well they play, how much they love to play, and how likely it is that they'll stay in sport. And then I want to talk about how all of us can create a movement in this community so that we can talk to other people who aren't here tonight, and we can slowly and surely shift the culture of our sidelines. So my journey started when I was researching this book and I came across this statistic. And I started studying all the parenting advice and coaching advice and best practices. And I kept coming across stuff and saying, why didn't I ever learn any of this before? I'd done every coaching license I could in the United States for soccer, yet I've never heard most of this stuff about child development, sociology, and education. And I talked to parents, and I asked parents who had kids who were older, right? These kids were in college or beyond, and I'd coach their kids. I said, hey, if you could hit the rewind button, right? Go back 10, 15 years. What advice would you give yourself 15 years ago about your kids in sports? And I kept saying two things. Number one, well, I wish I enjoyed it more, because it goes by so fast. And I don't think I enjoyed the moments enough. And number two, they kept saying, I wish way back then that I knew what was going to be important, what my kids would remember about sports. So I thought it was going to be really important, right, that I got them on the right team that won the 11-year-old Super Duper Elite Cup. But that's not what they remember. They remember the hotel. Right? They remember the team meals. And they remember the coaches that I put them with, both positive and negative. And I wish I was more intentional about the type of people, the type of adults that I let coach my kids, because some of them weren't very helpful in my child's long-term development. And then one of the most startling things that I came across in my research was really how this whole conversation fits into something that's far bigger than just if your kid's going to get a scholarship or be a great athlete. It's really a wellness issue. So I have a couple of videos for you tonight, and this first one here, I think it really just describes, why does this whole conversation matter? Why does it matter that your child is one of the 3 out of the 10 that stays in sports? Why does it matter that we get that number down? So here you go.
I probably would make a time machine. I would make medicine for the sick. I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总人戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much.
I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years.
I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter. But I don't have any wood.
I don't want to go check out the moon sometime. I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed.
If I had 5 more extra years to live.
I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
Eu cantaria na frente de milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
So, for the first time in human history, today's 10-year-old children actually have a shorter life expectancy than their parents do. And that's due to inactivity. They're sitting in front of screens, they're sitting in front of computers, and what's happening is in our schools, we're cutting recess time, we're cutting PE, we're making kids sit in seats more. Where in reality, right, if your 6-year-old struggled with reading, right, struggled with literacy, you wouldn't just say, she's not a reader. Right? You say, that's an important life skill. Well, what we know right now is that children who are active by age 10, 11, 12, who are active kids, 1/10 is likely to be obese, less likely to do drugs, to get pregnant, more likely to go to college, earn on average 8% more in their life, lower healthcare costs, and they're also very likely to raise active children. And kids who are not active at those crucial ages, It's exactly the opposite. Now, physical literacy, the ability to move, these are not innate skills. These are learned skills. How to run, jump, throw, catch, balance, twist, track, all these, right? All these things are learned. But we look at 6-year-olds who struggle in sport, struggle with movement, and we say, they're just not an athlete. But it doesn't mean they can't learn to move. And our schools have to do better getting kids moving, but we also have to do better in sports getting kids moving. Because when we don't, bad things happen. Here's a fascinating, here's an image of the brain from Charles Hillman, University of Illinois. On your right, a brain with no exercise. On your left, brain activity after exercise. And the parts of the brain that are stimulated by exercise are the exact parts of the brain that assist with learning and also assist with impulse control. So exercise actually is directly correlated to better academic performance. All the other countries in the world that we say we want our educational system to be like that, they know that, they do that. Here, we say sit in your seat longer. So, we need to stop kids dropping out. And I think kids drop out for a couple of reasons. But I want to ask you guys now, how many of you, just show of hands, how many of you played sports growing up? All right, so almost every hand goes up. And you can kind of, we'll go through the audience here. What are some of the things that are different for your kids today about sports than it was for you growing up? What's different? Just show of hands. Yeah.
They're year-round.
It's year-round, right? So there's no more seasons. Early specialization.
We organized much of it ourselves.
Yeah, so it used to be a lot of free play, and now
Didn't have an audience.
now it's organized, right? So I had lunch today after the lunch and learn. I didn't eat lunch at both, just so you know. With Bryce Salvador used to be the captain of the Devils, and we were just talking about, I was just saying how I played ice hockey growing up on a pond by my house, and when I came home. My parents didn't say, did you win? They were like, did you have fun? Did anyone fall through the ice, right? Yeah. Right? Yes, sir, you had something there too.
Oh, very similar. It's just that everything's scheduled. There's very little free play, or a group of kids just go out and play baseball, tag football, whatever.
Very little self-organization. Yeah, sir, you had something in the back there?
I was going to echo the same thing they said.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yes, sir.
Professional coaching.
Same thing, so professional coaching, and then that fits into the organized stuff as well. Anything else? Costs a little higher? Yeah. Injuries.
Multiple sports at such a young age. Multiple sports, multiple teams in the same season.
So that we lost sort of the town-weighted leagues, the ability to, play 2 months of soccer and 2 months of basketball. And
used to be one team per season.
Yeah, they all overlap. Yeah. Yes.
It's like parent intensity.
Intensity, and I think that's a good point. So parent intensity, and sometimes not just the, and it's pressure, right? So we're more intense because we feel pressure, and then our kids feel the pressure too, because we up that intensity. Yeah. So I think all these things, they all contribute to this dropout rate. And in my book, I call the 3 big myths that cause kids to drop out of sports. So I want to go through these 3 big myths, and you guys touch on a bunch of them, but I want to flesh out a few of them here because they'll feed into our panel later as well. So here's myth number 1. Right? The push for early specialization, right? We're asking kids to do more at younger and younger ages. Yet here is what the actual science says. From a sports science point of view, from an athlete development point of view, outside of female gymnastics and figure skating, dance, if you want to include that in, some people say diving, these are what they call early specialization sports. Those athletes actually hit their athletic peak when they're 13, 14, 15. So if you want to be an elite female gymnast, you got to go with all in very young. But in all the other sports, especially team sports, athletes don't hit their peak till their 20s. So this idea that you have to go all in on one sport really, really young, from a sports science standpoint, it's not backed up. Now, a couple years ago, we had this guy, well, you've probably heard of his book. Who's heard of the 10,000 hour rule? Right, Malcolm Gladwell. Right, who knows it's not true? Right, it's not true. In Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell said he kind of misrepresented the research of a man named Anders Ericsson, saying that you need 10,000 hours to be an expert at something. A couple years ago, David Epstein wrote a book called The Sports Gene about the role of genetics in sports, and I think he said it better. He said what it should be called is the 10,000 hour rule plus or minus 10,000 hours. Right? So, yeah, people took that really sticky concept of 10,000 hour rule, and there was like soccer clubs that mapped out 10,000 specific hours, like that was some magical boundary, that when people crossed that threshold, there you go. What Erickson's research was actually on was the quality of practice, and how do you make practice purposeful, deliberate, as he called it, and how quality practice mattered much more than the quantity of practice. So it's not to say that practice doesn't matter. The idea that you have to go all in really, really young doesn't hold water. From a medical point of view, and Dr. Martins will be talking about this later, right, what we know is that children who specialize in sport prior to the age of 12, one of the latest pieces of research from a guy named Dr. Niro Jayanthi, he was in Loyola and I was at Emory, 70-90% higher injury rates for single sport specialists prior to the age of 12. Twice the rate of overuse injuries. Much higher burnout rate. And one of the scary things about children who burn out in sports really young, and they burn out, they drop out, is that they don't come back. Not to the sport they quit, but they don't come back at a very high percentage to any sport ever. They walk away from sport and just become inactive adults. So we have to stop this massive push for gotta pick one sport, gotta do it year-round, really, really young, because it's not backed up. We have to create an environment where kids are allowed to play and sample multiple sports. And as they get older, if they want to go in one path, that's great, but they still need rest, they still need time off. I don't think, and maybe Dr. Martins would disagree with me, we can talk about this later, but I think every athlete at every age could benefit from yoga, right? Could benefit from martial arts from both a mindful perspective and a balance and flexibility perspective. Right, so we've got to get away from this push for early specialization. Then number two is this idea that childhood success is this great predictor of adult success. That the kid with the childhood star is going to be the adult star. Right? Look at that 9-year-old before. So, do you guys know if you have cuts, really prior to about age 15 or 16, if you're making A teams and B teams and C teams, which kids make the A team besides the coach's kid differently? Which kids make that team? The older kids. Thank you very much. The older kids. The bigger, faster, stronger kids who are older. And what we mean by older is they call this the relative age effect. Children who are born within 4 months of the arbitrary calendar cutoff date are far more likely to make a team prior to the end of their growth spurt. Because they're older. An 8-year-old, a 9-year-old who's born in January versus December, that's 10%, 15% older. That's a huge difference in kids. Yet we pour so much into, look at that kid, look how fantastic he is. No, he's just bigger, stronger, faster than everyone else. Right? I live this as an athlete myself. As you heard from my last name, I'm Irish. I was the last kid to grow. I wrestled at 98 pounds in 8th grade and was 170 when I graduated high school. One of the greatest things my dad did for me was say, you know what, you're going to grow. My dad was a college football player. He was 6'2", 220 pounds. You're going to grow someday. But take care of all the things that you can take care of now. You can't control when you grow, but you can be in shape. You can work on your technique. You can be coachable. You can be a great teammate. Take care of those things, and once you grow, you'll catch up to those other kids. So what's happened in sport, sadly, is we've lost our patience for development. We've lost patience in which kid is, we got to make cuts as soon as possible. We got to get an all-star team. And then there's no one left in Morristown to play, so now we got to travel, and there's no one left in New Jersey to play. So I grew up on Long Island. The first time I left the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area to play a soccer game, I was 16 years old. Right? Because there was 30, 40 games that I could play within a couple-hour drive from my house. And that's who we played. I didn't seem to care that we played a good team 3 times a year. But now I meet these, these families in Southern California. Like, we heard this 9-year-old soccer team in New York was really good. We need to play them. And we create these massive barriers to entry to a sport that you need a flat spot and a round thing to play. Now it's thousands of dollars all of a sudden. Right? So when I coached soccer at University of Vermont, this is one of my favorite stories about the patience thing. I had this front row seat. I don't know how many hockey fans are in here, but I had this front row seat to some of the best pickup hockey games in the world, because every sort of May and June, all the former UVM players would come back to Burlington and train with the strength coach and do all this work. And so I'd step outside my office door and sit in the ice rink and watch John Clare and Aaron Miller and Patrick Sharp and Tim Thomas, all these all-stars and Olympians playing pickup hockey. And there was another guy there, and he was 24 at the time when I took the job at UVM. And I met him, and he had yet to break into the NHL. And he was the hardest working guy I've ever met. He showed up before everyone else. He worked harder while I was there. He stayed after. He skated harder. No one was going to tell him that he wasn't going to make it in the NHL. Now, every coach in the NHL, every scout said he's not an NHL caliber player. But he'd come back after his morning workout and knock on our door like, hey guys, you want to play 3-side soccer? Hey, you want to go for a run? Hey, you want to run stairs with me? You want to do something? No one was going to deny him his dream. 24 years old. Not a scout could say, that guy's going to even make the league. He retired last year from the Rangers. His name was Marty St. Louis. Martin St. Louis, 2 years later, was the leading scorer in the NHL. 2 years after that, he was the MVP. So the best player in the National Hockey League was identified at age 24 as a player who could not even make it as a pro. So when I meet coaches who are like, yeah, 9-year-olds, I can pick them. You can't. It can't be done. The best way to create a sport development system is let as many kids play. Put them all in the best environment possible for as long as possible. Give them the best coaching possible. Let them grow. See what happens. That's how you the best way to develop talent. Not cut them and develop and give all your resources to a select few. It helps keep costs down. It helps keep participation up. And it's actually a far better way to let kids find their path in sport. Right? The other guy on this picture here, well, you probably all know Tiger Woods. The other guy was an NHL player named Patrick O'Sullivan, no relation of mine. He had a really sad book came out last year called Breaking Away that he wrote about trying to break out away from his abusive father, who was determined that he was going to turn his son into an NHL star. And Patrick did make the NHL. He retired at about 25, 26. Has no relationship with his family. Massive psychological issues. When I reached out to him, he had written his book, and I wanted to review his book for my website. And I'm sending him emails, and he's not getting back to me. I'm like, what's going on? Like, usually people will write me back. And then I realized that his whole book, when I bought it, was a story about him trying to break away from his abusive father, who was named John Sullivan. So when I did eventually talk to him, I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, that was weird. He's like, my agent vetted you 4 times. Like, I swear to God, there's a guy named John Sullivan who's trying to make youth sports better for kids. Right? So there's a guy who, right, his dad wanted to be Earl Woods. Didn't quite work out. Didn't quite work out. Right? So these 2 myths fit into myth number 3, right? Specialize as early as possible and get on, cut the bad kids, keep the good kids, get on a good team. Just focus on those early results, because sports is an investment, right, with a financial return. Now, sports is an investment in so many things. It can be almost guaranteed character development, overcoming failure, dealing with obstacles, dealing with a tough coach, working with others, being part of a team, all these amazing things. The idea that sports is an investment with a financial return, and this is one of the questions that you guys submitted here, it just doesn't hold water. The statistics from the NCAA say this, that About 3% of high school athletes in the United States play a college sport. 3%. About 1% get financial aid to do so. About 0.1 to 0.01, depending on sport, go from high school and play professionally. Those are tiny, tiny numbers. 2014, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation did a study, and they asked parents of high school athletes, do you think your kid has a chance to turn pro? And 29% said, yes, I do. And so this division between reality and what people think is driving this craziness, driving the participation ages younger and younger and younger. The average athletic award is about $11,000 a year. Outside of basketball and football, there's very few, if any, full scholarships. There's, 100 times more, I don't know the exact number of academic money available. So these three things are driving kids out of sports. So how do we start overcoming this? Well, from a psychological perspective, I like this quote. This is from a book called The Inner Game of Tennis by a man named Tim Galway. He says, performance equals potential minus interference. How people play is their potential, which is their genetics and their hours of practice and motivation and all that, minus interference. And the single greatest thing that interferes with performance is a lousy state of mind. I mean, think about that. Right? No coach has ever said, oh, my team showed up today and we lost all our skill. Right? But when you show up and say, we're not focused, we're not into it, we're not ready. I think as parents and I think as coaches, our job is to be people who strip away the things that interfere with performance, which is anxiety and stress and pressure, and let kids' potential show through. Even all the way up to the professional level, that's what great coaches do. They strip away the things that interfere so people can just play. Now, one of the things I hear so often, and I'm so grateful that you all came out tonight, because a lot of people come up to my talk and say, I was going to come because I didn't think this applied to me, because it's never crossed my mind to assault a referee, after a game. So you're not talking about this, right? When I get on airplanes and I tell people what I do, no one's ever said, oh, that's dumb. They all say, oh my God, you need to come to my school, because all the other parents are nuts. Right? And so when we talk about these things, what happens is a lot of people, I think, don't realize that some of the things that we do for our kids, our intentions are great. We do with great love, yet they can be incredibly damaging and drive kids out of sports. So the first one, I think one of the biggest ones, is something that we don't often think about, that's very, very powerful. And I want to show this through two quick videos. So the first video actually has nothing to do with sports. It's my daughter Maggie at her first ever piano recital. And I want you to watch the video and watch what happens when she makes a mistake. She does pretty well, right? 6, 7 months in the piano, a couple little bobbles, plays most of it well. Now raise your hand and be honest if you thought when she made a mistake that her piano teacher was going to yell at her. Right, or that one of the parents in the audience was going to be like, Maggie, you're ruining the recital. Right, this makes complete sense. Like, of course not, because she wouldn't play better, she'd play worse. It's already nerve-wracking to be up there. And we understand this in school, right? I'm going to assume that it's safe to say that no one comes here during your kid's math test and yells at them to carry the one. Right? So we understand all this, but yet when it comes to sport, all of a sudden we flip the switch. So let's compare a 7-year-old piano recital to a 6-year-old soccer team. Right? Does anyone think you're on the video? No. You're all safe. This is our great state of California's contribution to youth sport right here. cheerleader on crack. Does anyone here think that, and first of all, dads, like I'm not picking on moms, right? There's plenty of dad videos, they're just all explicit material that could be right? So does anyone think that she doesn't love her kids? Yeah, of course she does. Is she loving them in a helpful way? That's the question, right? Maybe you think about a game like soccer, basketball, like lacrosse, like hockey, these constant movement games, right? The intelligence, right, my friend Todd Bean from Barcelona says, the intelligence has to be on the field, not on the sideline. What that woman's doing, what parents will be doing, oftentimes, right, we're stealing the decisions. Go, kick it, shoot, run here, run there, move up, move back. We're stealing the decisions from the players who have to figure this out on their own. Now, when I go and I speak to thousands of kids a year, and I speak to middle school, high school age kids, and I ask them, what would you like your parents to say on the sideline of your game? What do you think they say? Nothing. No one's ever got that wrong. Right? Nothing. Nothing. But then what are you going to do? You're going to go to the game. What do? And we yell and scream and we coach from the sideline, even though we know that our kids don't want us to. I've never once met a kid who's like, I love it when I can tell it's my dad yelling at me. Right? They say it's distracting. It's tough. Now we do have a great love. We're just trying to help. But it becomes confusing, especially when coach on one side saying something and we're coaching on the other. I think a really interesting comparison is video games, right? Kids love it. You don't have to tell your kids, right, please go play more video games, do you? Right? They just go play. Why? There's no one chirping at them from the sideline, but one of the things that the video game makers do is they constantly ask their users, how can we make this better so you'll play more? Why in sports can't we start asking kids, how can we make this better so you'll play more? And then give it to them, because we have asked them, how can we make this better? Right? But we don't give it. Now if they say, I want an ice cream sundae at halftime, no, can't have that. Right? But we certainly can say, okay, if my kid says they'd rather be not yelling and screaming on the sideline or coaching on the sideline, then why can't we give them that? They'll play more. They'll play more. Then read the work of Carol Dweck at all, this idea of growth and fixed mindset. So Carol Dweck, from a psychological standpoint, is really interesting. Well, Dweck is a researcher from Stanford. She has done 40 years of work on performance and motivation. What she's found is that there's two types of mindset, fixed and growth. Fixed mindset individuals say they think their ability is fixed, it's unchangeable, effort doesn't matter. I failed my math test, so I'm just not good at math. I lost my starting spot, I'm not good at sports. Whereas a growth mindset individual says, I failed my math test, I need to study more, or I need to practice more. Right? What I am today has nothing to do with what I might be next week or next month. I'm not good yet. And what Dweck has found is oftentimes kids take on these mindsets by the way we praise them. When you praise ability, fixed ability, when you praise outcomes, you're so smart, you're so athletic, you're so talented, you actually instill fixed mindsets in your kids. You get praised because you won, you're a winner, versus you're a hard worker. And Dweck and her research is mostly in education, but what she's found is that there are massive performance differences, sometimes based on just a few words of praise. So as coaches, as parents, we have to be so intentional about everything we say. Instead of saying, you're the best, John, you scored 3 goals. It's, hey, John, you know how you've been showing up to practice and working hard and doing that extra shooting? That's why you scored 3 goals. Keep up the hard work and you're going to keep seeing results. Praise the same outcome, but I praised it by focusing on the process. And people who have a growth mindset, they understand that failure is part of the process, that it's okay, they need to learn. This is a really fascinating book, highly recommended, Mindset. You only have 14 minutes for TED Talks about the power of yet. It's really, really interesting. And her advice for parents of athletes is, number 1, just enjoy the time with your kids. Number 2, focus on the process. And number 3, your greatest job as a parent is to help your kids gain a love of the game. If they love a sport, then they'll play it long enough to actually get good at it. But so often, through our love of our kids, we push them so hard to something that we want more than them, and they never grow to love a sport. They never grow to love it enough to actually practice hard and get good at it. We all just focused on, you love what you're doing, you're enjoying yourself out there, man, good stuff really happens. The last piece in the psychological piece is this: why do kids play? I like this kid, he's my favorite. Right? Why do kids play sports? What's the number one reason? Because it's fun. Yeah, every study ever done, 90% of kids, number one answer is it's fun. So in 2014, the Aspen Institute has this initiative called Project Play. They commissioned some research by a woman named Amanda Visick from George Washington. And so in her, why do you play? Because it's fun. So she said, well, let's figure out what makes sports fun. So kids actually came up with 81 characteristics of what makes sports fun. Being respected, being encouraged, positive coaching, learning new stuff. It's exciting. Being with my friends. These make it fun. Coming in number 48 on the fun list is winning. 48. I know as a coach, I never showed up to a game thinking that there was 47 things that were more important than how we did. But that's what gets kids coming back. Now, I've learned this lesson. I shared with the group a bit this morning. I've learned this lesson recently. About 6-7 weeks ago, my daughter's soccer coach walked away. She's 10 years old. She's a U12 soccer player. And they're really bad. Like, they're not good. They've never won. They're in the wrong division. They've been in the wrong tournament. And the coach just up and left. And so I got to take over. Right? So we're currently about 0-17. Right? We've never won. But the kids are loving it. They're coming back and they're practicing and they're excited. And the parents are like, well, what have you done? My daughter, they just love to play. Because it's not about winning. Would they like to win a game? Yeah. But we can measure progress and in the process, and we can talk to each other, and we can be great teammates, and we can make this a fun environment that's a great learning, and it's a demanding environment. We're going to get better every day. But it's not about did we win, right? Especially young kids, right? About 1 minute after the game, what do they want to know? What's the snack? What's for lunch? Right? And we sit there in the car agonizing, right, as the coach. What have I done differently? What did I do wrong? The kids are like, what is for lunch? Right? Coming in dead last on the list that makes sports fun, just for your, in case you want to know, was taking team pictures. So just do with that as you. All right, so what makes kids quit when it's not fun? So what makes sports not fun? Criticism and yelling, fear of making mistakes, and the big one, when an emphasis on winning leads to a lack of playing time. When kids don't get to play, especially young ones. High school varsity athlete, they can understand, I might not be good enough, I might not get it. A 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, they need to play. So every coach who ever worked for me had a policy. If you pick them, you play. You've got to play. Especially in club sports where we're paying money. If you're not going to play, don't pick them, don't take them. Because that's just, you're stealing that from kids. Most kids say that they would rather play on a losing team than sit on the bench and never get to play on a winning team. They just want to be out there. And what we know about sport development, right, is that if kids don't play, they're going to walk away. And we can't possibly know if a 9-year-old or 10-year-old is going to make it. So why not let them on the field? Why not let them play? How will we ever know if they can play? Right? So what the statistic of losing 3/4 of kids in sports says is that there's too much of this and not enough of what gets kids out there. Respect me, encourage me, make it fun. I want to learn. Make it exciting. And I think if we tie this to our own lives, right? In a work environment, we would never be able to work in an environment where it's like sometimes the sporting environment is for our kids, right? And certainly, if we still play sports, and let's say you're a golfer, like, would you want your kids to come out, right, treat you like we treat them, right? So our friends from Hockey Canada have shown us what this might look like.
Come on, Dad, focus. Widen your stance a little. Don't sweat. And don't screw up, just the big ones. What are you doing? You got the ball. That was pathetic. That was sort of funny.
So my son TJ is 9 and he starts playing golf this year. And like golf, it's like, well, why is it? It's the only sport we hit a still ball. It's the hardest sport you can possibly play, right? And And so every time you stand over a ball, like, I could be that, do this, don't slouch, do this or that. But he just looks at me, he's like, Dad, be quiet. So now I'm quiet. And now, you know, I see him lining up and I have to bite my tongue because I want to help, because he's aiming right at the tree, right in front of me. I'm not going to say anything. Wham! It comes flying back. Dad, why didn't you say anything? You told me not to say anything. Right? All right, so how do we overcome this, right? How do we overcome it? So in my book, I talk about what I call the 7 C's of a high-performing state of mind. The 7 things that kids need to perform their best. Common sense and perspective, control and ownership, develop competence. That's where confidence comes from. Good communication, the right conditioning, caring and unconditional love. And I want to touch on 3 of those areas tonight, just kind of scrape the surface so you can walk out of here, you know, doing something right away. So we'll touch on 3 of those here. First is control. The 3 primary ingredients of a great sports experience for someone to play long enough to be good: they need control and ownership, they need enjoyment, and they need intrinsic motivation. Without those things, they'll never play long enough or hard enough. It doesn't matter how fast they are or how high they jump. They'll never be good because they won't stick with it long enough. So how do we give our kids ownership of the experience? I do this with my team through goal setting. And what I do is I get, say, middle school kids age on up, and I have them write down 3 to 5 individual goals for the season, 3 to 5 team goals. And then I ask their parents to give them the same sheet, and I say, go home and write down your goals for your son or daughter and for their team, separately. And then go sit down at your kitchen table and compare. Get on the same pages as your kids. Figure out why they are playing. Because I've had parents who are like, wow, I didn't think my son was into this, but he says he wants to play in college. Now I know I can help. And I've had parents who are like, my kid's going to play at Stanford. And the kid's like, I don't want to play in high school. Like, that's a bad thing, because forget sports, it ruins your relationship with your kids. But once you accept their goals for playing, now I think you're perfectly within your rights to say, you know what, if you're not going to ever pick up a soccer ball outside of practice, then maybe this high-level travel soccer team is not the place for you. Or a $20,000 a year youth hockey experience is not the place for you. But accept their goals for playing, and then push them towards their goals. You know, like I said, my dad was at my talk last night. It was great because I just told a story. When I was in high school, I said, I think I want to play college soccer. And so he said, okay, well, how can I help? What can we work on? And work on my fitness. All right, 3 mornings a week, I'll make sure that you get up before school and we'll go work on your fitness. It wasn't my dad dragging me out of bed to fulfill his dream. It was him helping me fulfill mine. That's the type of pushing that we can do, is positive push towards our goals. Right? With my teams, it's the same thing. I'd say to my teams, right, here's your goals. And then when practice wasn't good, I'd say, stop. You guys said you want this, this, and this from me. That's not what we're getting right now. 9 times out of 10, practice gets better because I just reminded them of what they wanted from the experience. So that's how you give your kids ownership. Number 2 is the right conditions. And there's so much that we could talk about here, but I think one of the most important things that we can do in sport is make it safe to fail. We have to make it safe to fail. We have to make it okay to make mistakes. It's not the end of the world when we lose a game. It's not the end of the world when we give a pass away. Right? Find me a kid who's afraid to shoot, and I'll find you parents and coaches who yell at them every time they shot and missed. Right? We have to make it safe to fail. It's a part of the learning process. And one of the biggest places we have to make it safe to fail is the ride home after games. What kids tell us in research, there's university level research from Australia, and they say, what is your worst memory of youth sports? The ride home. Right? Because they're physically, emotionally exhausted, right? Oftentimes we're emotionally all wound up. And yet we got them locked in the car, right? We're going to make this a teachable moment. And what kids say over and over is that maybe for some kids this is the least teachable moment out there. This is the least teachable moment. Everyone's different, right? Some kids might, you know, if you have your son or your daughter brings up the game after a game and talks about it, by all means have the conversation. But if she doesn't or if he doesn't, find a better time. Talk to them beforehand, especially if you know what you're talking about a sport. Say, when's a good time for me to give you feedback? At dinner tonight, tomorrow morning, whenever it is. But just not in the car when there's so much emotion still attached to it. Now, like a couple years ago, there was a great documentary, and I want to show you a little clip from it, that HBO did. It's called Trophy Kids. And it's one of the best videos I think I've ever seen of the ride home.
Did you tell the coach to put you at the game?
Yeah.
How many times?
I was standing right next to him.
Are you sure? Because I stood right next to you.
I was behind him as many times as I could be.
Dude, you're not getting it done. Let me explain something to you. If you do something wrong, do I tell you?
Yeah.
Okay, I correct it. Or I tell you so you can correct it. How do you know what to correct if you don't even know why he pulled you out of the game? What'd I tell you about that? What, are you scared of him or something?
No.
So why don't you go ask him? Like right now, you know we're going to have this conversation after the game. You know it's coming. Okay, this is part of you becoming a young man. If someone does something, you're just going to take it? So if I was to walk up to you and just slap you inside your face, what are you going to do? Just turn around and be like, I don't know why that guy did that. It doesn't make any sense, Jay. You act like you're 10 or 9 or 8. Dude, you're just going through the motions. If you're going to be selfish, you know what? You have other brothers and sisters. Okay? We'll take you from out of that school and give them a chance and put them in a private school. I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It confuses me. What's the problem?
Every time I come back in the car, I always feel like I'm in trouble or I did something wrong.
Well, did you?
Yeah.
You've had more personal training than any of those kids out there. Okay? Back to the drawing board. Back up, you're getting early, back up inside the morning. Okay? Because it doesn't make any sense. You have to be driving back and forth from this school. Back and forth, back and forth. Back and forth for you to go out and do absolutely nothing. I don't understand why you don't get it. I don't understand it.
Has anyone seen that? Do you remember how it ended? Yeah, so he quit football, moved in with his mom. So it was really interesting. A couple months ago, we put this clip up on our Facebook page for Change the Game Project. And it was this really interesting discussion. And a lot of people were chiming in, saying, hey, that's just a dad with high expectations for their kid, right? I'm making this commitment, you're going to school, and you're not putting in the effort, you're going through emotions. And the dad was right. And I'm not saying that as parents we should not have expectations for our kids when we do things wrong, but just not there. Not on the ride home when this kid just got benched and his team just lost. And what did that dad accomplish? His kid quit football, and his kid moved out and has no relationship with him. So there's this discussion went back and forth, and then it was really fascinating thing happened. Guy wrote in and he said, I was the cameraman sitting in the front seat. I was sitting there. And the dad was, and he told the story, the dad was a college football player, NFL draft pick, and he got arrested. And didn't make it to the NFL. So he was determined that his son was going to make it in his place. But his son didn't even want to play football. He was done with it. So I think it's so important that we really create the space on the way home. Just let it go. Now, if, again, like I said, if your kids bring it up, have the conversation. If you're the one who's always bringing it up, then try not to. Now don't go like dead silent right away. Your kids will think like you're really mad or something, right? No, like just let it go. And if they don't talk about it, just have that conversation. When's a good time to talk about peace? But I realize you might need to unwind, especially the older they get. Right? Especially the older they get. And I think this is really hard. Like, this is one of the hardest things that we can do is to create this space. I even struggled with this when my son TJ was 5 years old. Plays his first soccer game. And I'm so proud. It's a big proud moment. He walks out in the field. He goes, I don't play. And he walks off. And I'm like, okay. And then he goes to practice that week. He's totally fine. Game 2 rolls around. Walks out. No, not playing. He walks off. And now I was embarrassed, right? And I'm angry at TJ, and I'm embarrassed. I'm thinking, like, what are all the parents thinking me? I'm supposed to be this all-star coach, and my kid won't play. He's totally happy because he found like a cricket or something. Like, perfectly amused. So we get in the car after the game, so TJ, and all of a sudden, wham, I get karate chopped in the chest by my wife sitting next to me. And I was like, how, honey, what was that for? She goes, really? Didn't you just write a whole book about this? Right? So I left him alone, and all of a sudden he started, wanting to play. So this is hard, but if you can create the space, boy, it makes a difference. And then the third piece is this, right? Just carrying an unconditional love. I don't think anyone would have come here tonight and say, oh yeah, my love for my son or my daughter is tied to whether they win or how they play. But sometimes, again, the way we act or the things that we do after games tells our kids that. And that's why what we teach, this is something I learned from my friend Bruce Brown 10, 12 years ago, is 5 words, right? I love watching you play. I love watching you compete. When you tell your kids that at the end of a game, it just tells them that your love for them is not conditional based on it. What do you want to go eat? There's times to talk about the game, but I'm just proud of you for being out there. You know what kids say is their favorite person to come watch them play? Grandparents, yeah, why? Because they just love you no matter what, right? Strike out 3 times, boy, you swung off. Right? I love watching play. Now, I get more phone calls and I get more emails about this than any other thing that we talk about. They come to a talk, they're like, I read your book. Here's my favorite story. This guy right here, Peter Schmidt, right? He's the men's tennis coach at USC. He was a professional tennis player. As a coach, he's won 5 NCAA team championships, dozens of individual championships. And he wrote me right after my book came out, and he said, someone gave me your book to talk me off the ledge because my 3 boys all wanted to quit tennis. And they wanted to quit tennis because practice never ended. When practice was over, I kept coaching. When the match was over, I kept coaching. We never stopped talking about tennis. My kids grew to hate it. And it was affecting our relationship, it was affecting our marriage, it was affecting everything. And so he said, I read your book, and I just started saying, what I love watching you play. He said, all of a sudden things started changing. He said, at first his kids were like, who are you and what you doing? Right? But eventually they were like, he said, this magical thing happened. They started wanting to practice again. They started wanting to play more matches. It's like, as a coach, as an adult, you always think more is better, more is better. And what I realized was less is actually more in this situation. The less I said that when practice was over, man, we just talked about something else. Everything got better. And so last September, I was actually in LA, and we were supposed to have lunch, Peter and I, and he had to cancel because his oldest son, who 4 years ago was done with tennis, was quitting tennis, was in the finals of the US Open for junior doubles. Now one of the best young tennis players in the world. Not because his dad did more, and again, a dad who was an expert in this field, but because his dad took a step back and just said, this experience belongs to you, right? How can I help you on this experience? We did, when practice is over, let's go surfing. That's how you do that, right? You take nothing from tonight, he said, this makes a huge, huge difference. Huge difference. So my last piece for you is this, right? Who can think, right? I bet you, is everyone here like thinking like, oh, there's some people who should be here tonight. Maybe you're married to that person. I don't know. Right? I get one of those vote requests, like, can you make this up to my husband? He's not here. Right? So we need to create a movement. See, I'm a firm believer that 99% of people and 100% of people in this room, we're great parents. Right? We love our kids. We just want to help. I think schools, I think sports organizations, including the ones that I run, or I ran, we did a really poor job of helping parents to say, hey, here is how you can help. Here's how you can make this better. And so we need to create a movement where we reach out, not to the dad who's most likely to threaten a referee, he's not going to listen, to the people who think like you and act like you, because they are the majority. And so we start speaking up on our sidelines and start saying, you know what, that's not the way we do things here anymore. That's what we have to do. My last video for you, one of my favorites, how do we create a movement in 3 minutes or less?
If you've learned a lot about leadership and making a movement, then let's watch a movement happen, start to finish in under 3 minutes, and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. He must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore, it's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out when you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. Three is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come two more people, then three more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. But for the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is over-glorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Has anyone seen that before? That's how we roll in Oregon, baby. Right. So, it's not, I'm happy to be the shirtless dancing guy, but it's not about me, right? It's not about John O'Sullivan. It's about all of you taking back your sidelines for your kids, taking them back from businesses, the business of youth. Now, the business of youth sports isn't inherently a bad thing, but some businesses do use sports wrong. They demand certain things of kids that are not healthy or well. Organizations from grassroots all the way up to the NCAA, which allows college coaches to make verbal offers to middle school kids. It's ridiculous. So we have a lot of villains in this, but I think the movement has to start from the base, team by team, family by family. You know, taking this message and sharing it with a couple other people, and they share it with a couple of people. I want to help you. I'll give you a little link at the end. If you want to get my Change in the Game, the ebook, you can have it for free tonight. You can get it by email. Just by joining our blog list and getting our blog, I'll send you the book. And then take it and send it to as many people as you want. Right? Don't tell my publisher, but just do that. Right? Because this is how we create a movement. Community by community, family by family. We need first followers. We need people, and I like the line at the end. They say the real way to make a movement, right, is to courageously follow it and show others how to follow as well. That's how we make a movement. And that's how you take some people on your sidelines, the outliers, and you say, you know what, that's not how we do things anymore. And if you don't like it, then leave. Or come and join us. Either way, problem solved. Right? We must do that. We have to do that, right? For them. For our kids. You all probably have a picture like this. This was my daughter, Maggie's first soccer team. They were called the Mighty Unicorns. This picture was actually taken on that day. I found it when I was doing my TED Talk. It was taken on that day when I saw that 10-year-old boy get screamed at. And I love this picture, A, because all these kids still play. B, because I know the powerful impact that sports can have on their life, making them not just better athletes, but better people, helping them live longer. And we can all do that with our own kids, and we can all do that with our teams. I've given them a little bit more ownership. making it just more safe to fail. And just by loving watching your kids play. And if you can do those things, we can start transforming youth sports and making it about the needs and the values and the priorities of our children and not necessarily the adults. And that's how we can change the game and put a little more play back in the playing ball. And I hope that you will join me, join the other first followers in your community like Jennifer, like Deborah, like Smitty, and join our movement. So thank you guys so much. We're going to do some questions. We're going to have Smitty and Dr. Martins come up. In the meantime, if you want, there's all my info. So you can do it. You get the free book, changethegameproject.com/free CTG book, or via text. And that's my direct email, Facebook, Twitter, all that fun stuff. So, are you? No. So if you have a question, please ask it, and then we'll just repeat the question. I think it's the easiest way to do it. So raise your hand, and it's hard to see. There's a giant spotlight here. So pretend you're drowning. And before our first question, let me just let these guys introduce themselves quickly.
Thank you. My name is Damian Martins. I'm the medical director at Atlantic Health. And I want to take just a moment to say I had a chance to read John's book, and I encourage you. It's a nice, quick, and easy read, but it just gives you some really concrete and useful tools for not only for student athletes, but for kids in general. I thought it was a great tool. And being in the business for 15, 20 years, I will tell you everything he says is based in science. There's a lot of good resources in there, and we end up seeing on the back end when it's not taken care of. So we end up seeing these kids when they need a sports psychologist, and that's great being part of a multidisciplinary group where we have that access. We also see the kids at the other end when they're burned out with multiple sports and injuries and overuse problems. So I think it's a great tool, and I really recommend you pick it up and give it a read. Thanks, Doc.
My name is Smitty Horton. I'm the athletic director here at the high school. This is my 25th year here in the district, the second year as the athletic director. I'm by far no means an expert. I'm just honored to be up here next to these gentlemen, and glad they have the macadamia nut cookies here tonight.
All right, my first man drowning there, yeah.
So it's not so much, I have a question and a statement. So first, the statement. When you were talking about, I'm sure that's some of the bad actions of parents on the sidelines, and everyone thinks it's not them. And of course, I thought it wasn't me either. And early on, I'm so proud of my one son who was playing at a very high level, and I said, I'm going to videotape everything he does. And after the very first video, I realized I was one of those shouting parents, because you're videotaping yourself, actually. And when I played it back, I was horrified. And part of my movement was to challenge all the other parents, just videotape your child. You'll hear how embarrassed and how hard you are on your children. And it stopped immediately. And I'm proud to say it really isn't me now. After all these years, I stopped because it was just disgusting. The other thing is a question, and I try to keep a healthy balance between urging my children and pushing them, but not making it part of what I want. And there's definitely a fine line. But my coaches in our lives are always trying to pull my two boys to play at a higher level and an older level. And I'm worried that it could create burnout, physically it could challenge them beyond what they are capable of. And I always say, well, the coach knows what he's talking about. He's a professional. That's why I'm paying him. And I'm wondering, is there any evidence that says keep them in their age?
Let's start with that.
Again, I'm going to go back to John's book. He did a lot of research in the Canadian philosophy, if you will. So if you have a chance to look at that, it is very interesting how they've done a good job, at least putting down on paper. I'm not sure how they implement necessarily as well as they could. But there's a lot to be said about the different age groups and how my wife reminds me, do a lot of things better, but they tend to mature quicker, and in terms of athletic development stages, also probably achieve those earlier. So I would reference that and have you take a look at the different age groups and how they categorize it. What's really important is that intrinsic motivation, and that occurs at different age groups, again, with individual people, but the kid has to want to do it for themselves. And that doesn't occur until later on for most kids. So I think it's important to look at what's driving it. Not necessarily the coach driving it, but does the child want to go to the next level? Are they ready to develop that dedicated practice time? It's not the 10,000 hour rule, but it's meaningful dedicated practice that makes people excel. So not to dodge your question, but to say, well, take a look at the Canadian philosophy, see where your kid fits in that age group. Are they mature enough to make that step? Are they doing it for the right reasons? I think it's a good way to look at it.
Maybe you want to answer that just from, obviously, as a high school lady, you see kids playing out of their age group all the time.
My answer would be, as long as you feel that you're comfortable with the coach's decision and you're not allowing someone else to make those decisions for you. If you're comfortable with the way that the coach is pushing your child forward, then I believe you can follow the coach's instinct or the coach's knowledge. Now, our coaches are not experts. We hire the best that we can, but I cannot say that all of our coaches, there's so many different philosophies out there. So you can get different perspectives from many coaches coaching the same sport. So it's really what you feel comfortable with, and as the doctor said, what your child feels comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think those are fantastic points, both of them, and then I'll add on that every child's path is an individual. So even with your two boys, it might be a good fit for one and not for another, and that's okay too. You know, what they know in research with athlete development is some kids bloom early and end up here, and some kids bloom late and end up in the same place. And so every path is an individual. I think one of the most important things to realize, and I talked to a Dutch soccer coach about this, who's coached in 3 World Cups and 3 things, and he said, you think about a sport like soccer, and a kid, when a player plays up an age, what's happening at that faster age is the older age, the game's much faster, right? So there's so many more actions per minute. He said, now if you ran, 4 times a week, 10 kilometers, and then all of a sudden went boom to 15 kilometers 4 times a week, you get injured because of that much more many actions per minute. So oftentimes when the kids jump up in age, they're playing at a much faster speed. So even though they're only practicing the same amount of hours, sometimes playing up is 30-40% more repetitions of certain things because the game is so much faster. And that's when they get injured. And so in Holland, what they're very good at is saying, okay, you can play up, but we taper you in. You start with half a practice, and then you work your way to 2/3, and then you get there at the end, where at the end of the season you're doing that. Here we just say, go ahead, play up. So, and I would also echo Smitty's thing that, and our coaches are not necessarily experts in sports science or certainly in medicine, and they're not necessarily experts in determining, functional movement issues. So things like that, when kids are playing up, finding a physical therapist, analyzing your son's movement, consulting with a physician when things are slowing down. Because I think you've told me sometimes you're also the amateur psychologist, right? Where it's like kids come to him saying, I'm injured, and by every test they're not injured, they just don't want to play anymore. They don't know how to tell their parents that. So there's lots of different answers to your question, but yeah, I think we covered a chunk of them there. So hopefully that's all. Next question. Yes.
I guess this would be for City Clerk. Is the goal of the Morris School District's teams kind of a collective winning mindset, or the don't cut, play everybody kind of mindset, or does that vary from coach to coach? And is it something as a new AD you're imparting to these coaches?
Can you repeat?
Yeah, I'll try to repeat it. The mindset of the school district here, and a cutting philosophy in some of our sports, and the mindset of participation, or, let me try to answer the question for you. It would depend on the season. The season, a lot of times it depends on the number of student athletes that are out. We have some sports that are non-cut. For example, our swimming team, our cross-country team, those are teams that can hold a lot of numbers. Our fencing team was a non-cut sport. Some of our other teams, like a baseball team, for example, you can't have that many numbers of students on the roster. It's also a management thing for your coaches too. How many can they effectively coach and put in the right places? There's a safety aspect to it. So it depends on the teams and the season. We want as much participation as possible. We are our highest numbers ever right now. We had over 600 people register in the fall for sports, and that's phenomenal to us. Last year was like 480. So our numbers here are growing, but with that, we hold as many players on the teams as we can. We have another question?
And I'll just, before the question, I'll just piggyback on that and say, I think any school with unlimited resources and unlimited facilities would say, let's have 6 basketball teams, but if you have 1 court, how many hours of practice and kids can you cycle through? Whereas like cross country, it says, okay, we can take a lot of kids. And I had a great talk with your cross country coach today, your track coach, and said one of the best things I ever heard in sport, there from a coach, was a cross country coach who said, the goal of our program is to have one of the first kids to cross the line in every race, because that means that we are a place for elite athletes to achieve their best. And we also want one of the last kids to cross the line, because we want this program to be a place for everybody. And so some sports logistically are limited, but it doesn't mean that there's not a sport that doesn't have a place for your son or your daughter. It just might not be the one that they hope for. And again, it's hard. I feel like I'm blessed. The 3 high schools in Bend, Oregon, where I live, are about 1,400 kids, so a little smaller than here, right? I went to St. Anthony's High School on Long Island. There was 2,400 kids. I went to my first soccer tryout. There was 90 freshmen out. And I'm like, oh man, I don't think I'm playing baseball anymore, right? Because I can do this for 1 sport, but not 2. And so, again, I think it's hard, but I also think that as we get to varsity sports, the competition and competing your best, is certainly part of the focus. But what I talked to coaches about today was sport also needs to be an extension of your educational mission as well. So we're not just developing athletes, we're developing people. And some coaches are fantastic at that, and some coaches aren't. And I agree 100%. I always had a certain roster size because I knew that once I got past that, or I would take on a certain amount of problem players, all right, because I knew that any more than that, and I would start to lose, the inmates would start running the asylum, right? So, and that's, every coach is different on what they're willing and able to take on. And I think a great coach is one who is self-reflective enough to say, you know what, I can do a phenomenal job with 24 kids, but give me 28, and I'm going to start to lose a few. Yeah.
Hi, Smitty, this is for you. This might be totally out of the realm of possibility, but I have to ask it. Due to resources, budgets, and facilities,
yes,
is intramural sport ever going to return as a way of having more participation at all the levels, middle school up, so that kids can participate in a game in a good facility, but
yeah, I know. There's a lot of restrictions with that, with our gyms constantly being used. We're really in a good place here at our high school, though. With our hour lunch that we have currently, we have a lot of activities that take place at that time. We have students outside every day on the football field. They're either playing football, they're playing soccer. We also have a lot of tournaments here at our school. We just had a badminton tournament for the last 2 weeks. We have a volleyball tournament, we have a soccer tournament, we have a futsal tournament, we have a handball tournament. These are all things that the students organize and do fundraisers with them. So we are really in a good place with the intramural sports, and they all take place during our hour lunch.
Is there any way to get that down to the middle school? I know there's.
The middle school is set up a lot different, and but then they have a 25-minute lunch over there, so I don't know where it would fit.
Yeah, that's pretty hard to fight that schedule and philosophy.
Yeah.
I fought for recess there for years. They
Yeah.
took it, their kids leave 5th grade and then they go to lockdown.
Our kids take advantage of it every day. There's probably 100 to 150 kids on our field while we're outside. Then when we come inside, due to the weather, we'll have the main gym and the auxiliary gym open for our students during lunch.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Hi, John. I wanted to know in your research if you studied or heard a little bit about the benefits of individual sports versus team sports in development and confidence and athletic ability. Is there any reason that you want to have your kid go towards one versus the other, or is it really based on what they love? I mean, is there anything around their a better development or better qualities that you get from one versus the other?
It's a great question. So the question is, right, individual versus team sports. Is one better than the other? I think individual athlete. My wife is a collegiate diver. She'd say, oh, individual sports, right? So I was always a team sports guy, but I actually wrestled from 2nd to 8th grade. And I look back on so much that I learned from wrestling, because it's one thing to step out in the field and rely on 8 or 10 or 11 other people, and it's another thing to be all by yourself. And I remember, I stopped wrestling in 8th grade, and then I lived in Dale, Colorado for a while, and I was a competitive snowboarder. I did a snowboarding competition. I remember the first one I did, I was in the gate, and I'm like, oh crap. Like, holy cow, I'm all by myself up here. And it had been so long since I had done that. So, I think the most important thing that you can do as a parent is help your kids find their passion instead of trying to say this is what you should be passionate about. If you help them find their passion by letting them experience lots of sports and then supporting the one that they love, even if they love it for a while and want to move on to something, then again it goes back to that love of sport thing that's so important. When we try to cram them into, I think you should be this, right? And I heard everything. I got an email from someone who's like, I've had my kid genetically tested and I think he should be this. It doesn't matter what the genetic testing says. Yeah, maybe he'd be more likely to be an Olympic cyclist, but doesn't mean he likes riding a bike, right? And so I think that's really, really important. And I think, certainly young, a blend of the two is good too. And maybe, I wanted to ask you, like, what, in your practice, are there certain things you see, not just individual versus team sports, but multi-sport kids versus, single sport kids?
I laughed when you said the genetic testing because we will see that a couple times a month or so. Somebody will come in and we have the ability to do genetic testing. Please, I'm not encouraging anyone to do it. The ability to do that and make some, I would say, rough estimations of how you perform, typically more with, if you read Epstein's book, The Sports Gene, the CGF sports, the centimeters, grams, seconds sport, or the track and field type sports. And you'd be amazed at what people will spend money to get genetic testing and come in and say, will you please tell my kid that they should be a sprinter because they want to run long distance, but genetically they'd be a better sprinter. And it's the craziest thing I've ever heard. If your kid wants to run long distance, let him run long distance. Despite the fact that genetically maybe they'll never be elite, who cares? So we do get those questions once in a while from patients and mainly the parents when they bring their kids in. But you bring up a good point. I think what is probably the most important thing is to keep your kid active. John did a great job of sort of explaining this dichotomy we have. We've got a group of these burned out, overused injury kids, and we've got another group of these kids that don't do anything and are sitting on the couch getting obese. So we've got to do something to sort of fill that gap and make exercise fun and make it a sort of the Canadian model, make it a lifelong commitment to stay active as opposed to the business side of what youth athletics is becoming and the kids burn out and they don't play anything anymore. So that is important. What we try to encourage, and it's not always easy because parents do believe one of those myths that you've got to specialize early and you've got to be dedicated to one sport to excel at it. But if you ask, you know, college coaches, professional athlete coaches, they like the diversity that multi-athlete sports bring to the table. The problem, I think, with that is that back in the old days when we played sports, there was seasons and time off. Now they all run together, and it's really hard to get these kids the time to recover. And if they specialize early and play sports all year long, they will eventually get overuse injuries.
Especially with one side.
Exactly. So it is a challenge to really manage that.
My question is for John. I was curious if you've ever read the book by Mike Matheny.
Yes, the Matheny Manifesto, yeah.
So I was curious what your thoughts are on it. This really goes back to more of the parents, but making them sign a contract that they really can't even speak in this contract that they can't shout out for their kids, they can't coach inside, and he removed families from the team if they broke the contract. I was wondering if you've ever run across something.
So yeah, the Matheny Manifesto started. Mike Matheny was the current manager of the Cardinals. When he retired from Major League Baseball as a player, he got asked to coach a 10-year-old team. And so he came up with this 5,000-word letter of sort of, hey, I'll coach, but under these conditions. And first of all, I highly recommend the book. I think it's really good because it also traces his journey as a player and his parents' journey and how they helped him and different coaches helped him. I think parents and coaches have to work together. I don't think it does a great thing when coaches say, don't do this or don't do that. The way that I read the book, and I remember it, and I could be wrong, was, you know, a lot of, you know, some of the families left because he said, we're not going to go play a tournament every weekend. We're going to practice, and we're going to let kids bat in any spot in the order, and we're going to let kids play all positions, right? Your kid is not going to just be the pitcher and the shortstop. We're going to let all those kids play there because they're young and they all need to learn this stuff. And some people left because of that, and I think he's right in that situation. So, you know, I think that, again, if your kids, you know, you can have that conversation with your kids. What would you like me to do? Most kids are fine if you cheer positively. Right? What Matheny says, I don't want you to shout out at a kid, you know, when he swings and misses on a third strike. Come on, make contact, right? Like, of course I was trying to make contact, right? You know, so there's certain things, but you certainly, if your kid gets hit, you're allowed to cheer, right? But not, you know, hey, slide left. Hey, get your elbow up, things like that. He didn't want them yelling out coaching instructions. He wanted to be the only coaching voice, and I think that is completely appropriate. But I think coaches and parents have to have this back and forth. And maybe, you know, Smitty, you want to speak to this point of, in my experience, when coaches lay out their philosophy and their expectations and say, these are things that are appropriate to speak about, and you might have a 24-hour rule, right? No emails, no phone calls, and please no social media posts about what a bad coach I am, you know, until 24 hours afterwards. Get the emotion out of it, right? And then let's have that meeting. And in that meeting, we might just we'll talk about your kid and his role. Not about the other kids playing, not about the tactics we're playing, not about who's the captain or anything. That's not your role as a parent, right? You know, that's the role of the coach, that's the role of the team. And in my experience, coaches who create that approachability, much like teachers, and create that connection, and this is what I talk about with the coaches, that connection is much more important than knowledge when it comes to coaching, and the ability to connect and build trust. And when we do this as coaches, then as a parent, you're more likely to come and say, hey, my kid's been coming home frustrated, you know what's going on there. Or you're more likely to come to me and say, hey, you know, his grandma just died, and so he might be struggling. Like, it's been amazing to me as a coach how many times I'm like getting angry at a kid that like, my grandma died this morning. I'm like, why didn't you tell me that? Like, that would be good to know. And so an open relationship within the boundaries is an important one, a good one. But it's not a, you know, I get to pick the lineup, I get to pick my kid's number, I get to pick those type of things, type of relationship either. And maybe you want to speak to that, you know, what you guys expect, basically.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that up much better than that, but our coaches, the majority of them do have the 24-hour rule, so, you know, while the emotions are high on the sideline or whatever, there's no questioning of any of the calls or who was in the game or things like that. Also, the same thing, when we have a meeting, it's to talk about their child and not, you know, who else is playing on the team. So a lot of the coaches have those guidelines in their handouts that they give at the beginning of each season.
And you know, I'll add one thing too that I think is really important is sort of the chain of command as well. Like if you have a problem, first of all, if your kid's in high school and they have a problem with their coach, they should talk to their coach, right? They need to be able to have that conversation. We're not taking them to their first job, right? So it's like they need to be able to have that conversation. Then if it goes on and you feel like you need to tweak, it needs to start with the coach. We were talking today about how, you know, when I was growing up and I had a problem with my coach, my dad said, talk to your coach. Then we got to this thing where the parents just went to the coach without the kid. Then the parents skipped the coach and went to the AD. And now a lot of times the parents skip the AD and they go straight to the superintendent, right, or the principal or the board. And so all of a sudden a board member gets a call from an angry parent and thinks, why isn't the principal doing his job? Why isn't this committee doing his job? What's this coach doing? And it's the first time they've ever heard that there's a problem. So working your way up, because a lot of times I've found that problems are just slight misunderstandings, right? Parents get angry because they think their kid, you know, should be a starting point guard. But the kid has said, you know what, I can help my team by being the first player off the bench and add energy. That's the role I want. They've never actually had the conversation with their mom or dad that, hey, this is the role that I want to fulfill for my team. And so the dad, you know, calls the AD and says, what the hell's wrong with your coach? My kid's a D1 prospect. If your kid said he'd rather be the sixth man. So, you know, I think that's important as well. There.
Yeah, so you started out initially casting what you felt was a big difference between now and when we were growing up. And I think me personally, it's the business of youth sports, the for-profit business of youth sports. So my first question, do you think it's sustainable, right? In what we've seen in the last 20 years, return on investment, are we producing better athletes? I'm not sure if we are. More importantly, are we producing better kids? And a lot of what you talk about was behavioral, right? And I think the engine in all of that is the investment parents are making at age 7, 8, 10. And at that point, they want return on investment. Not fix bad behavior on the sidelines with coaches, with agents, etc. So I think I'm hoping it's not sustainable, quite frankly. I don't think the last 20 years have been good overall. You look at how many people partook, how many people went by the wayside.
Well, Dr. Martin says it's sustainable from a medical perspective.
Probably not. I've got my PAs here and I'm laughing because we have a table, we have a chart in our office when the crazy parents come in and tell me their son John is going to be the next whatever. And, you know, he's 12, 13 years old and he's on his second elbow surgery. And there's no shot in hell that he's going to the pros. But the parents are convinced of it. And we pull out the table from a study from a couple years ago showing the percentage, I think you've seen it, I think you talked about it in your book, the percent chance of going from high school to college to the pros. And try to explain to them how unrealistic this is. That if your kid is at that age group and has already had so many surgeries from overuse injuries, they won't make it the distance. And if you ask even college, if you ask college coaches for baseball, for example, they'd rather have a kid who didn't start pitching until they're much later on in life and not the kid that started pitching early, because there's only so many rotations your joints will do, and they know the kid's not going to make it. So from a physical standpoint, if they specialize early and they play all year round, and that's more so down south where they play baseball all year round. These kids just don't have much of a chance. And that's a lot to do with the genetic gift. Some of them are gifted and have strong ligaments and tendons and can go, but the majority of them can't. And they end up getting hurt, being unhappy, and then, as you said, dropping out of sports.
Yeah, and it's huge the amount of kids and people like yourself and, you know, James Andrews, the guy who invented the Tommy John surgery. I mean, the guy actually wrote a book called Any Given Monday about all the kids coming into his office on Monday that got hurt over the weekend playing sports. And here's a guy, he didn't need to write a book, but he did because he said, we've got to stop this trend. So I agree with you. I hope that the business model is not sustainable. And again, the business is not every sports businesses doing it wrong. There are some that are doing it really well. Sadly, a lot of them, you know, you take the hockey club that's playing cross ice hockey and doing it well, and then the one swoops in next door and goes, but our team win all our games and we play full ice for 6-year-olds, look at us, right? And then people go, oh yeah, we should probably be doing that because that looks like the adult game. So I think the good businesses need to stand up, and they also need parents to do their research. And when someone says, well, we're doing this, to not be afraid to say, well why? Why are you doing it that way when, you know, do you have a physician on staff that says these kids should play ice hockey 12 months a year? Because that's not what USA Hockey says they should do. Or even USU Soccer says that that's not what young kids should do. So I hope if we start asking as parents, the collective parents, if we start asking for a better model that serves our kids, I think businesses will pop up that serve that model. I think that model is potentially the rise again of good multi-sport clubs, right? So in Europe, this is the model, right? Barcelona is not a soccer club, it's a sports club, and it has basketball and handball and all these other sports. And so what if it's at least 12 and under, if we, you know, right now we have the YMCAs, they do a great job, but the problem is a lot of times their coaching is not as good as the club sports coaching is. So what if we had multi-sport clubs that said, we're going to provide the same super high level of coaching, and we're going to have a soccer emphasis in the fall and a basketball emphasis in the winter and lacrosse or baseball, whatever, in the spring. But you're a member of this club. You can show up 5 days a week and play, and we'll still offer some lacrosse practices in the fall and some soccer in the spring. But get a place for the good athletes to show up and play multiple sports until they're ready to say, you know what, that's the path I want to go down. That's a sports business model that I think could work. People ask me what would I do if I wasn't doing this. That's what I do. I'd start a multi-sport club with high-end coaching, just like any sort of health club, and say you pay a monthly membership fee and you show up here 5 days a week and you get to play. And I think it'd do pretty well. Yeah, well, now I think I should.
If you are lucky enough to have a child that has an off season, but they want to maintain their level of fitness or increase their level of fitness, what would you say is 2 or 3 of the best sports or exercises they can do that will not lead them to overuse injuries?
Well, it probably depends on what they're, so the question is what sports or things don't need to overuse, so it probably.
So like your kid's a soccer player.
Okay.
And has winter off for a change.
Okay, so sports
Yoga?
that also promote eye-hand coordination for a soccer player is good. So, you know, basketball is not a bad one. I think I said martial arts, swimming, yoga, things like that. You know, and just, you know, again, working with a physical therapist or actually a certified strength and conditioning person who can look to develop muscular balance, right? I've met 15-year-old elite soccer players that can't balance on their shooting foot. Their muscular imbalance is so bad. I worked at Manchester United last year, and their coaching and academy director is a friend of mine, and they have hired circus and parkour coaches. You know what parkour is? Like obstacle running? Because their kids were getting so many upper body injuries, broken wrists and shoulders, because they don't know how to fall anymore, because they haven't fallen out of trees and gone to the playground as kids. So even at these pro clubs, they're teaching tumbling, gymnastics, martial arts, parkour, all these full body athletic movements to high level soccer players. So anything that teaches that, I think is really important.
That's a good question. And I think important when the soccer season's over to actually give them some time to really just shut down. I mean, give them a month just to sort of relax and recover. Maintaining cardiovascular fitness in any way. Swimming's great, easy on the joints, biking, running if they have to, but really give them a chance to recover. But you mentioned balance, and you know, it's not a big secret. A lot of professional athletes, even NFL players, take ballet, take martial arts. It sounds corny, but there's a famous trainer, Martin Rooney, who works with a lot of professional NFL teams, martial arts expert, teaching them hand speed, hand foot speed, and ballet for balance. So it sounds crazy, but sometimes those things are important skills that they wouldn't normally get.
Great question. Is there one? Yeah.
I often find that what happens with the younger kids and the right sports and everything is that there's such disparity in coaching because it's parent coaching, right? So sometimes you have really good coaches, but other ones are wannabe athletes that kind of didn't make it, so they're looking at parents and like coaching their kids. Is there a resource online or a video or something that you could recommend that we could show to dads or moms, whoever coaches, so that they can at least get a little bit of what we presented tonight?
Great question. So the question is really that when you sign up for, especially grassroots recreational sports, right, you enter the coaching lottery, and sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. And I think one of the things that we don't do well in sports in the U.S. is we don't require certification of coaches, right? And we don't train them. And the statistics are huge, like the dropout rate so first of all, I think statistics say that only 1 in 5 coaches in the U.S. are trained in communication and motivation of athletes. And the dropout rates for coaches who are not trained are like 6 times higher. So it's a much higher retention rate when we train our coaches. Yet most park districts are just like, oh my God, we got enough warm bodies, right? So this is something that we have to ask more of our coaches. And it can start with our book or my TED Talk, or one of the speakers who works for me, a guy named Reed Maltby, has an amazing TED Talk. It's called The Echo of Your Words, and it's on the lasting impact that our words leave as a coach, right? And you've probably coached long enough, like, that you can think of, you think back to something your high school coach said to you in the locker room, and it still sticks with you 30 years later, either good or bad, right? And so these are things I think that that's a great TED Talk to show them. I'm doing my next book is a coaching book, and it's on kind of a lot of this stuff for coaches and how you create culture and how you lead the right way. Positive Coaching Alliance is a fantastic resource, and they have great stuff for coaches. And then heck, right here, I have a partner that I do coaching clinics with named Dr. Jerry Lynch. We're coming to Princeton in April. We're putting on a 3-day conference on leadership and culture building and mindfulness and visualization for coaches in sports. And it's going to be Hopewell Junction High School, actually, as of today, April 21 to 23rd. So, this is more for coaches who are, coaching full time or whatever, but it's the type of coaching we need, right? What we did, what the exercise I always do with coaches is I ask them to write down 5 qualities the best coach they ever had. And we did that today with the coaches. And we put them on sticky notes. They each get 5 sticky notes. Then we stick them up on 2 separate walls. And this wall has to do with coach's knowledge of the game, and this wall has to do with coach's ability to connect. And every time I've done this, every coach, every country, everywhere, it's about 90-10 connection over knowledge. These are the qualities that matter. And so we need to start focusing when we're training our coaches, especially our grassroots coaches, that if you can spell Google, you can get all the drills you want, right? But you need to focus on connection with kids and coach the child, not the sport. And this is where I think a lot of our youth sports organizations are letting us down, right? We now, I think 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we had a lot of teachers who coached all the youth sports, right? My first soccer coaches were teachers, right? And so they didn't necessarily know a lot about soccer, but they knew a lot about kids, and they understood education and social and child development. Now we have a world of soccer where we have tons of coaches who know a lot about soccer and they know nothing about kids. And we have to fill that gap. And I think even my organization needs to do better of creating online resources. We have one for parents that we give away to any organization that hires us. Hey, have any parent go through this course, you can have it for free, just so that they're signed up for our blog and they kept getting drip fed this good stuff. My next goal is to create that same type of thing for coaches. Yeah.
Well, first I take exception to Patty's question because I think that was directed at me. No, just kidding. But having coached like youth sports for a lot of years, particularly soccer, from grades 2 up through 9th graders. The question is, so early on, right, it's about teaching them how to kick a ball and a lot of technique things, and about having fun. But as they get older, is there a certain point to where as a coach, you want to impart upon them not just the fun of playing, but working together as a team and the concept of winning by all working together, things like that. Like I wouldn't talk about that to them as second graders, but you know, when you have a team of 8th and 9th graders, is that an appropriate age? Because varsity sports are about winning, right? You know, there are banners hung in basketball courts of, you know, we won this division title and that division title. So that's about winning. But from a rec perspective, is there a right age where you start to transition more to about working together as a team and winning as a concept?
Well, I would say on that, and I'm sure these guys each have an opinion as well, that I don't think as a coach you ever talk about winning. You talk about competing. Right? John Wooden never talked about winning. Right? His definition of success was being the best team we're capable of being. And especially in team sports, there's so many things that are not in your control about winning. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not trying to win or not competing to win, but I think you need to, when you coach, you talk about the things that are in your control. And winning is not in your control. Competing your best, competing your focus, giving your best effort, preparing your best, all these things are the things that you can talk about. And if we take care of that, if we take care of the process, then we win. I think that can start really, really young, right? I see a lot of coaches, right, who talk about, oh, it's not about winning here, it's about development. I'm like, no, you're just a bad coach. Like, right, so you can't hide behind that either. But as a coach, you cannot trade development for winning at a young age. Number two, and I think this is really important, sports always has to be about enjoyment. And sometimes we use the word fun and we say, well, it can be fun or it can be competitive. But, and I know you've worked with, you know, professional athletes, like you see pros retire when the enjoyment is gone. It's not fun enough to do all the work it takes to stay at that level. And it's not always an ability thing. And I think it's because people mistake enjoyment and pleasure. And so has anyone here ever run a marathon? Sure. Okay, good. So mile 20, 26. Any pleasure? No. But you still enjoyed running, right? No, she isn't. Right? Me either. You know, but so there's different things, right? And so sports doesn't have to be about pleasure. It can be demanding, it can be hard work, but it still has to be enjoyment where people say, man, I can't wait to do that again. And so from the youngest ages all the way through, when I'm coaching, I'm focusing on enjoyment, I'm focusing on competing, and I'm focusing on the things that we can control in practice and in games, and that's all we talk about. And if we take care of those things, and we're enjoying it, we're coming back and keep getting better, then eventually we're probably going to win a lot too. But I don't think there's a cutoff. I think a high school varsity coach might say, you know what, you're not getting a lot of playing time today because we need to win this regional championship. No problem. But a 9-year-old coach can't say, sorry, Johnny, you can't play today because we need to win. That's not appropriate.
And I don't want to get quoted on the Canadian philosophy, but I think it's what, girls around 14, boys around 16, if I remember correctly. Read John's book, it's in there. He outlines it very well about sort of that intrinsic motivation and when winning becomes more of a value. But I think to really pay attention to the process goals versus those outcome goals. And I think kids should really be thinking more about the process goals, about hitting the ball the right way or learning a specific skill. And the outcome goals become less important, I think, if you look at that way.
I think I hear more about winning from our parents than I do from our coaches. And if our coaches are not winning, our parents do not want our coaches around for long. So that's the angle I hear as far as winning. I want the maximum amount of participation for all of our students. You know, to me, it's not the winning philosophy, but like you said, there's banners and things that are downstairs, and we do want successful programs. Our successful programs bring that participation level up because people want to be part of that.
I think we have time for probably one more, right? I don't know, or Secret, you tell me we have to be done.
So it's a two-part question, and I think I know the answer to the first part of everything you've talked to us about today. The second part, I guess, is more for Dr. Martins. So I have a third grade son who loves football and really wants to play next year, but the only thing that's available to him is tackle football. So my
As a disclaimer, I have to say I'm not answering this question in my official role as the NFL, so I'll get a call from Roger tomorrow saying, why did you answer that question? That's a complicated one, and I think you're right. There should be more focus at the younger age on the fundamental skills. And if you can get some of those skills, if not the majority of those skills, playing, two-hand touch or flag football, I think that's important. The coach's argument, because we've had this discussion with several of the professional coaches, is at some point they have to learn how to tackle properly. That being said, I think if you follow the CTE and the concussion drama that's laid out before you, a lot of schools have cut back on the amount of contact, tackles. A lot of professional colleges have turned away from that as well. So I think there's probably a balance in terms of being able to play a contact sport with limiting the violence during practice, limiting the number of hits to the head. It is a very controversial issue. As you know, that article came out yesterday, maybe this morning, about MRI findings in younger kids, high school kids. And if you follow the study 2 days earlier from the Boston Brain Bank, 91% of college brains that were evaluated in autopsy were positive for CTE. So there's definitely an issue. I'm not sure what it is, not sure I'm allowed to talk about it, but I will tell you that it's a complicated one. And I think that the focus ought to be on the kids really participating and working with fundamental skills.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that, your part one, I think it's a really great point, and this is what we do poorly in sports, is we make the kids' version of the game, we want it to look like the adult version as soon as possible. So I've had a conversation with USA Football, and I've asked them that, can you give me any scientific reason that says we have to start tackling at 10? As opposed to, could we start at 14, where a lot of the research says, okay, your head, the proportion of your head to your body and your neck muscles are stronger, that oftentimes concussions aren't from the hard hit, it's from the repetitive things and the snap back and forth. And they said, no, we don't have any reason. Football, number two, you have to realize is probably the big, on the youth level, doesn't really have a governing body. USA Football only started 10, 12, 15 years ago. And they only have a certain percentage of football leagues that run under their umbrella. So you have all these different leagues that pop up, and what happens sometimes is one says, okay, we're going to do this, and then Pop Warner says, oh, we'll play tackle, right? And then so it falls under that. We've learned more about the brain in the last 5 years than the previous 500, and I think the next 5 years will be something similar as well. But I think we have to do, as youth sports organizations, a better job to say, yeah, here's the flag football path. If your kids want to play, until we know better, if you want to play tackle here, yeah, not a lot of contact in practice and whatever. And football is probably the most difficult sport because it's not really a contact sport, it's an impact sport. In soccer, right, if two kids hit heads, it's very clear and it's evident and you're like, ooh, what just happened there? Let's look at that kid. In football, 10 on 10 do that every play. It's very hard to sometimes see the blow that might be a concussive blow, and so that kid stays in. So there's all these different factors that play into it. Soccer, banned heading. In 5 years, U.S. soccer might look like the smartest, most proactive organization ever, or it might look like the dumbest. We don't really know, and so it's a really hard thing. But I would say, overall, football or not, the one thing we'll never be able to do is remove all risk from sport, right? By nature, you might break a leg, in my case too, right? It might happen, right? And you can't remove that. And still, we can't wrap kids in bubbles either, right? We can't, we gotta let them go to the park and fall out of a tree and learn these things. And so we can't legislate out all risk. We have to realize that there's going to be some, and our job as medical people and sports leaders is, can we remove the risk that really makes no sense in taking, right? And does that kid have to learn the double backflip off the 50-foot jump snowboarding right now? Thank God my son doesn't want to. Awesome. Well, I'm happy to be out. You said you go into the live. If we have any other questions, I know our AV person's going to want to go. sign it. They're actually half price, so they're $10 if you want to grab a book. If you sell it on eBay, it'll sign it's worth at least $11.